client of mine from several years ago who was putting together kind of one of her early first launches. She was creating a pre-launch content series, so like 3 full videos and a lead magnet and a webinar and a full email series. And her list wasn't really big enough at that point to sort of sustain all of those activities. It was almost overkill for the offer, the high ticket offer that she was doing and the list that she had. So to go back and say, well, okay, you actually don't have to do all of these things right off the bat just because you see this 8-figure business doing it. You can go focus your efforts on getting people to one conversion event, do more personal reach outs for the list you have, and you are likely to be more effective.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Danielle Weil with us. Danielle is a copy and marketing strategist and creator of Launchflow. She helps expert business owners build a fun, profitable, sustainable launch engine. Since 2006, she's written dozens of 6- and 7-figure launches, generated over $170 million in sales for clients, and mentored business owners to break their own sales records while launching in a way that creates flow and momentum. Danielle, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I would love for you to share your origin story of how you became such an expert in copy and in launches specifically. I know you had some amazing experiences working with big, well-known marketers and folks that have had quite a lot of success. So maybe if you're allowed, I don't know if there are any NDAs preventing you from talking about any of those folks, but it'd be a fun start to this episode to hear a little bit of that storied background.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started writing copy somewhat by accident when I was in college. It was better than the other college job, starving college student. And I got into it sort of by accident. My degree is in English literature and creative writing. And I've always sort of been a writer, and this was just a different type of writing. Was a lot of fun. And then a couple years of doing that, and then I got connected with Ryan Levesque, creator of the Ask Method, and sort of became the senior copywriter over there for many, many years. Got a chance to work with some other names, Todd Herman, Marisa Murgatroyd, Josh Turner, Selena Sue, and Danny Inney, among others. And those folks are launching quite a bit, whether it's their big launches or their smaller courses or their programs. Like, you're just writing lots and lots and lots of launch copy. But of course, you can't write copy without having some sense of the strategy as well. And so being behind the scenes for so many of these launches, getting all of this experience, seeing how everything came together, really. And I really love the excitement of a launch. I believe in the value of doing a launch in your business if that's something that fits into your strategy. And yet I see so many business owners a little afraid to do them or viewing launches as somewhat negative for whatever reasons. Like, well, I don't want to do that. That's stressful. And I'm kind of here to present a bit of a different view.
Yeah. So what is that different view?
Is that launching works when done right, when you have chosen the strategy that's in flow for you, when your offer and your audience are aligned, and when your energy is aligned as well. So that's what I call launch flow.
How does that differ from how most people are doing their launches?
You will see a lot of strategies out there. Like, they'll come in waves, they'll come in trends, right? And you and I have seen this. It's like, okay, well, the challenge launch was big for a while. Everybody's doing a challenge launch. Everybody's doing the 3-part PLC launch. And you just see a lot of them happening. And that tends to be the prevailing wisdom. Like, that's the way. That's how you launch. These are the strategies you follow, and people follow the step by step without actually asking themselves, like, is this actually a strategy that's going to work for me and my business, my strengths, and feel good to me? And there is also a focus on following the steps versus maybe focusing on more of the fundamentals around, is this offer actually right? Have I actually gone deep into my messaging and my audience? They're the let's follow the step-by-step plan. And my friend, our mutual friend, Michael Roderick, put it very well yesterday when he said it's about formulas versus frameworks. It's like follow the formula, but that might not work for you. And you actually need to get to the framework that's underneath the fundamentals and align those first, because there are a lot of marketing strategies that work. There are a lot of techniques that work, a lot of tactics that work, but not all of them are going to work for you.
So what would be an example of a launch gone wrong? And you don't have to out anybody, but how does one fix or prepare to be successful and not screw this up? Because you can spend a lot of money on Facebook ads and then end up kind of empty-handed at the end of it.
Sure. Well, I mean, I can think of a few examples, but one that I'll share is a client of mine from several years ago who was putting together kind of one of her early first launches. And she was creating a PLC pre-launch content series, so like 3 full videos and a lead magnet and a webinar and a full email series. And her list wasn't really big enough at that point to sort of sustain all of those activities. It was almost overkill for the offer, the high ticket offer that she was doing, and the list that she had. So to go back and say, well, okay, you actually don't have to do all of these things right off the bat just because you see this 8-figure business doing it. You can go focus your efforts on getting people to one conversion event, do more personal reach outs for the list you have, and you are likely to be more effective than sort of blasting all of these moving pieces.
So what did she do differently next time?
There was one quiz that led to one workshop, and the offer was tweaked a little bit, and she filled her cohort.
And that was what, maybe 20 people, 50 people? What was the size of cohort?
I think it was something like 15 was what she wanted.
Okay. So if challenges are kind of over, feels like those were like all the rage back during COVID. What does one get these days in terms of show up rates and ROI for things like challenges or quizzes or webinar like master classes and things like that?
Show up these days is tougher than it used to be. Because again, in COVID, we were all sort of just sitting at home with plenty of time. People's calendars are full, they're traveling more. There's also a lot more competition, I think, in the marketplace. But I wouldn't say challenges are out. I wouldn't say quizzes are out. Like all of these things, and I have examples that I can't necessarily talk about people who are using a challenge right now to fill their mastermind. I have people who, are using quiz funnel really, really effectively, and workshops and webinars, of course, are still going strong. We've had other things enter the fray. It's a matter of, are you using that strategy effectively? Are you using it in a way that creates desire, trust, and urgency? The 3 ingredients, I think, of any successful launch, right?
Okay, so let's talk more about that. What would you do to increase desire, trust, and urgency in a campaign or a launch that you're producing for a client or for yourself?
Those are, I think, 3 separate questions, right? The desire piece is, have you created an offer that's compelling, that's a no-brainer, both from a pricing perspective where it looks like a great deal and relative to the value you're getting, and have you tapped into existing demand for that offer, right? Because you can't just sell people what you think they want. You actually have to sell them what they want. And have you tapped into that? The trust piece is, have you established your credibility as a person who can A, help them and solve their problem, and B, do what you say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And C, the urgency piece, and this is where I still think the launch model has an edge over an evergreen funnel, because you have that natural urgency lever built in. You are closing the doors, it's going away, the bonuses are going away, whatever that thing is. But I'm always a proponent of authentic urgency. I like my fast action bonuses to have a reason behind why they disappear other than, it's just going away tomorrow. So for example, I'll do a bonus that before the program starts, I'll be doing website reviews. They're happening on XYZ date, which is why you have to get in by this date if you want one. So that's an example of what I would call authentic urgency.
It's good. Yeah. So what would be an example of a bonus that really, I don't know, made your skin crawl? You don't have to give any names or anything, of course, but it felt really inauthentic when you saw it.
Putting me on the spot here. I mean, there's the one thing that I think has sort of led me to go the other way was seeing a lot of, okay, and this bonus is going away tomorrow. Like, we can't do it for everybody, even though behind the scenes, of course we can do it for everybody. Of course everybody's going to get it, right? And yet you're saying, nope, nobody can get, there's a countdown timer on it. It's going away. Goodbye. And you can do that. You can. People will believe you. But it creates this inner, at least for me, this inner discomfort, right? With saying that, with presenting that, and asking people to trust you when you're doing something that's not necessarily true.
Yeah. How about this one? There will be no replays.
Oh, when I say there will be no replays, I mean it. I do my live workshops, and there actually is no replay. I will say there are other dates you can come to the next one, but I'm really pretty adamant about someone being there live because I think that you get a better experience when I can interact with you.
Yeah. And they bring more of themselves and they're more present.
How many of us have gotten access to a replay and then either been frustrated that you can't fast forward it and you've got to, there's no scrub bar, or have fast forward it to get to, whatever you think is the interesting part or the pitch, like, okay, what's happening?
Yeah. And then also if you're also, let's say, cooking a meal or checking your email at the same time, you're not really present for whatever the potentially transformational content that you were going to get. And so you don't get the transformation. So give us some examples of really great bonuses that make people want to take action and just feels like, wow, this is a must.
So the best bonuses, and this, learned from Ryan when we were creating bonus offers for those launches, is answer the biggest objections you are getting. So great bonuses anticipate and answer the biggest objections around the program, and you have actually called them out and created a bonus to answer those objections. A great bonus package has multiple modalities. So it'll have, maybe some pre-recorded trainings, maybe some, something that's downloadable, maybe something that's audio, maybe, even a ticket to a live event if you're doing something like that. So it has multiple modalities. Great bonuses. If you can give one-on-one time, those always have a very high perceived value, especially if you don't do a lot of them.
And can you share any examples from Ryan of a bonus that anticipated and answered those biggest objections, or are you not allowed?
Pass.
Okay. How about for you? Because you have your own offers and your own launches for your stuff, for launch flow and whatever else that you put together. What are some examples that you've produced of?
Yeah, so it's actually evolved. When I launched the first cohort of my program, it was right when AI was everywhere and it was just coming onto the scene. And the big question is like, can AI, write my copy for me? I still think the answer is not no, but I'm a little biased. And perhaps willing to be convinced otherwise. But the bonus that I created for the program was 10 ways to use AI in your launch. Now, I'm not an AI expert. In any sense. I use it in, a couple of specific ways. But the people coming into my program were also not AI experts. Like, I introduced people to ChatGPT for the first time. So having that as a bonus to answer that, well, what about AI question, was just one quick example. Another example is, well, what about the copy? What about writing all the copy? And because I'm a copywriter, I will include in my program how to actually write the thing that you need to launch your sales page, your emails, your webinars. So you will get all of that detailed training that I've created, and examples as well. So I call that out as a separate bonus.
And are you personally doing challenges or quizzes as part of your launch strategy?
I do have a quiz. I do have a quiz. It's what's your number one launch block? And that sort of leads directly, because once you know which one of the 5 flows is most out of alignment for you, then I want you to come to a workshop with me to talk about it and figure out that actually there's 5 things that need to be in alignment. So I've got quiz to live workshops that I'm doing.
Right. And these are virtual.
Yes.
Gotcha. And how does all this relate to you being a really renowned copywriter? I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to understand where this fits in for you. You've got all the great copywriting that you've been doing over the years, and you're well respected in that field. You have launches where you're strategizing things like quizzes and challenges and whatever else, one-on-one calls for bonuses, etc. And how does I don't know, what's your day look like? What's your month look like in terms of what you're doing in terms of the copywriting versus the your own launches versus getting hired by folks to manage a big launch?
Well, I still do some done for you copywriting projects. But at some point, and you'll see this happen to a lot of copywriters, like either they will stay and just be copywriters and make that their career, or they'll say, well, okay, let's grow into an agency, or let's grow into an education business. Let's grow into teaching what we know. And I love teaching. It's one of my favorite things to do, and specifically helping business owners with what I think is a weak link sometimes in a lot of the training that's out there, specifically around the words, right? So the program is called Launch Flow. We get the strategy together, but it's very, very much grounded in the messaging. It's very much grounded in the copy and the persuasion and making sure that that all makes sense. So yes, I still write copy. I write in the mornings, and then I take a very long afternoon nap, and then I come back in the evenings to evenings my time to chat and have calls and teach.
What time do you normally go to sleep?
Midnight-ish.
Okay.
It works. It works for me.
All right. We're in the same time zone now. We're both in Israel, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time with dealing with the U.S. market and also getting a good night's sleep.
It's true. It started out of necessity, really, because I had, when I moved here and started doing this, 2 small kids. Now I have 4, and they're a little bit bigger, and they kind of, put themselves to bed for the most part. But it was like, all right, kids go to bed at 7. I can only start meetings at 7 because I'm spending time with them between 4 and 7 o'clock. And then I actually like that my mornings are quiet. I like that I don't have meetings to go to, or that there are things going on, and I can actually focus on, the deeper work in the mornings. I'm also not a super morning person, so I'm not out there wanting to start at 5 a.m. or anything. I'm maybe at my desk by 9.
Yeah, I like the quieter mornings too, but it feels like these days go really long, and it's a lot. Anyways, I don't want to distract us from all the good stuff we're talking about by complaining about having to stay up late. So back to messaging. What are some examples of good messaging, examples of bad messaging as it relates to some launches that maybe you're involved with or not involved with, and you've seen? What would like? Let's get more granular about the messaging side of this.
Hmm. Trying to think of specific examples, and I would actually,
Or you could make them up. You could give hypotheticals. Yeah.
I would maybe rather generalize, only because there tend to be patterns in, um, it's not a matter of good versus bad. It's, have you accurately understood your audience or not? Have you taken them through a process, a bridge, I call it, where you have changed their beliefs to for them to understand that your solution is the thing that's going to solve their problem? And first you have to understand what those beliefs are. You have to know, like, okay, what does my ideal person need to believe in order to buy this thing? In order to buy into my solution, what do they have to believe about me? What do they have to believe about my offer? What do they have to believe about themselves? And those beliefs shift, not necessarily all at once. Sometimes they do if you've got like one big webinar, but the whole point of having a launch that has a pre-launch period and, a webinar and an open cart is that you have time to shift those beliefs. And so the most effective launches will use the pre-launch period really, really effectively in terms of education, in terms of belief shifting, in terms of um, calling in perhaps a more unaware audience and moving them through the stages of awareness. Now, I've seen launches that have worked on a shorter timeline that did not do that effectively, if you're looking for examples. So I don't know if it's good messaging or bad messaging. It's they did not have the right process. They didn't have enough time maybe um, to bring people on that journey, to bring people across that bridge. There's also,
Well, what would be an example of a good timeline, or not an example, but like what's best practice for pre-launch period, for the open cart period, et cetera?
best practice is, it depends, but for the most part, you will want a couple weeks to start doing your seeding content, your even pre-launch content, to get people sort of thinking about the ideas and concepts that you're about to present. And then when you say, hey, I'm doing this thing, it's sort of top of mind for them. They're like, oh yeah, I was just thinking about that. And they wonder why they were just thinking about that. It's because you've been gradually seeding those ideas and talking about those ideas. And then you'll have, depending on what conversion events you're using, you'll have a pre-launch period of a couple days to even up to 2 weeks. If you're using multiple conversion events to sort of get people in and get people through, lots of partners, lots of moving pieces. But if you're doing a smaller launch, your list maybe not as big, then you have a couple weeks of warm-up content. You invite people to one conversion event, and that is your main event.
And what tends to work best as a conversion event? A webinar?
Again, depends. And this is why we talk launch flow, right? This is what, like, I'm not going to give you, this is the step-by-step thing. It could be a workshop. It could be a challenge. It could even be almost like a private podcast. It could be, I like webinars and workshops. It could be a video series that they're consuming, a small little bite size. I had a client who designed like a bunch of these little 2-minute videos. It could be a series of live videos that you do. It's all open as long as the content within it is taking people where you need them to go. And it's what works for you. And like, does this feel good to me? Is this where I can shine? Like, I'm great when I am in a room of people and I can interact with them and have a conversation and workshop their stuff. Like, that's my favorite way to teach and also show my skills. But someone else the idea of doing a webinar just goes, and they'd rather pre-record something. It also might fit their market better if they're talking about something like building a graphic design business or something like that, to have more edited, pre-recorded content. So it really does, those are the questions that asking yourself will actually help you find the right path.
So what would be a good partnership strategy or process or plan for getting the right partners, JV type partners on board, especially if you don't have a big list?
For a
Yeah,
launch,
for a launch, especially if you don't have a big list.
partners for a launch, if you don't have a big list, is being in rooms and spaces where you can create real relationships with your partners, right? You and I met through a group that we're both in. We can name names. We're
Yeah.
in, yeah, we're in a group called JVMM together, JV
Yep.
Mastermind, and
Dove's been on the show. Yep. Twice.
there we go.
And by the way, Ryan Levesque, I didn't mention this. He's been on the show too.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So really being in and being able to form deep relationships with partners. If you don't have a big list, and this has been, sort of my experience as I'm growing and building things, it's being able to have the longer relationships with partners, to do things together that's more than just, okay, I'll mail for you, you mail for me. Like, have you mailed yet? It's maybe doing a joint event together, maybe thinking creatively how you can turn something into a conversation that adds value to what's going on. I had conversation with one of my partners, like we did a pre-recorded thing, but really about launch strategy. And she had her perspective, I had my perspective, and we posted it, and it set things up very nicely for, it was a nice introduction for us to promote each other later on. So you don't need 100 partners all at once if you are just starting out with partnerships. You need deep relationships with a few key partners. At least that's my view.
Yeah. Can you maybe name a partner that you've been really successful working with, and vice versa? So they've gotten a lot of value, you've gotten a lot of value working together?
Sure. So I have a very good friend, Tiffany Newman, and she's a brand strategist. And the reason that that works so well is once people get aligned on their brand, they generally want to launch it and launch a program with that new messaging. And so there's, it's just a natural, she's also done my brand. And there's just a natural fit for her to say, hey, you're ready to launch your brand, come talk to Danielle. And for me to say, well, launching is one thing, but you've got to have that solid brand foundation. Tiffany's the master.
Mm-hmm. Cool. How did you end up meeting?
We met through a mutual friend, Ron Reich. Do you know who that is?
No.
Naming a lot of names here.
Yeah, I don't know that person, but yeah. So oftentimes I find that the people that are most influential and beneficial to me and vice versa are, kind of like divinely orchestrated meetings. Kind of what are the odds that this would happen? And then of course, it's been life changing having that person in your life or in your business. Or
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Who have been your biggest inspirations in terms of not just launches, but just copywriting and business, and going out on your own instead of working for others, and having that kind of laptop lifestyle? Who are your biggest not heroes, but influences? Well, how about let's start with books. What are some books that have really helped you? Whether it's about copywriting, whether it's about or just the authors of those books, Jay Abraham or Bob Bly or Claude Hopkins, or I don't know, just
Funny story, I did not read a copywriting book until I was several years into my career.
okay.
I had been working as a copywriter for many, many years before I picked up a copywriting book. But the ones that I do have on my shelf are Over Deliver by Brian Kurtz,
Yep.
Influence by Cialdini. I do a Cialdini book club. Persuasion.
Both Brian and Bob have been on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
they're awesome.
and what else is there? Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's not a copywriting book specifically, but I think that was a big aha for me. The fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Still a work in progress, but
Awesome. How did you learn about Brian Kurtz?
Brian spoke. So I was at one of Ryan's early masterminds. I think it must have been 2015, and Brian was a guest speaker there.
Mhm.
And then we reconnected after the fact a couple of years later, and then hopped into his group as well recently.
So you're part of his group?
Currently, yes.
Okay. And how is that?
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've spoken to his group before. Yeah, I know Brian through Genius Network. So Joe Polish's mastermind. Yeah. Joe was a guest on the show too. We're just name dropping all over the place. And what's your favorite principle from Influence from Dr. Robert Cialdini?
That's like picking a favorite child.
I know. I'll ask you that next.
I refuse. Well, and there is because they all, for the most part, work together. Like if you have something that's working, there's generally a couple of layers of those principles at play. And it's
Mhm.
hard to separate them out.
But what pops in your mind is like a principle that you really love that really works well. I'll start. Okay, so unity, the unity principle. If I find out, for example, that the person went to University of Michigan, it's like, oh, I went to U of M as well. Go blue, right? So that helps to really build rapport and relatedness right at the beginning of the conversation. If I know that about the person, start off that way, then we've already hit it off. So that's something that I like about those influence principles is finding common ground or commonalities that they feel camaraderie with me. Yeah. How about you?
I think one of the most interesting ones, and I forget if it's influence or persuasion, but the idea of commitment. Is it something that I use a lot in copy? It's like getting someone to identify as something, make a commitment to something, and then we are basically hardwired to follow through with that and do things that are in line with that statement that we've made, that declaration that we've made, that commitment that we've made. So I am a person who XYZ, and then, oh, if you are the type of person who, and there's a lot of ways that it can be used for good, so to speak. I just think it's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an example that you've used in your own marketing?
Um, sure. I like using showing people that how the actions that they've taken already um, bode, for future actions and how that uh, creates alignment and consistency, right? So like if someone took the time, I have a mini course and it's 14 emails. You're supposed to spend 20 minutes a day hitting reply to that email so I get the replies and doing the little mini exercise. And when someone completes all of them, this is like surprise unannounced bonus. I will invite them to a call to review their emails, right? Because you've shown me that you are the type of person who makes a commitment and follows through with it, and that you took the time and made the commitment. Well, I would like to give you the opportunity to continue to make that commitment as well. Maybe not the best example, but it's the one that came to mind.
That's cool. And now that this is out there, maybe everybody's going to go through and answer all 14 emails and
I mean, but here's the thing, I don't mind if you do, if you are the person, because so many people will sign up for a thing, do a thing, buy a thing, and not complete it.
mhm.
And that's not the way to actually get the result that you want. So if someone has taken the time to buy my program, spend 20 minutes a day for 2 weeks engaging with my content and actually making an effort, I would love to reward them with a review. Like, I would love to help you get that next step.
Yeah.
That is sure any day we'll do that. So that's the secret. If you get inbox love and do all the exercises and I see that you've done all of them, you get to chat with me.
That's cool. That reminds me of one of the many. Uh, that reminds me that one of the many daily affirmations that I go through is, "I'm a man who does what he says he's going to do," because I want to be that kind of person who makes commitments and follows through 100%. And so I just kind of wire that into my consciousness.
It's something that, again, I think is feels obvious, but you don't always get, surprisingly. Like, oh, if you've made a commitment or said you're going to meet a deadline, do that.
Yep, absolutely. So do you do affirmations or anything that's cool that you want to share in your morning rituals?
My morning ritual involves coffee,
Yeah.
and that's basically it.
Okay.
um, I'm not one of those wake up at 5 a.m. so I can journal kind of people. I've got 4 kids. And yeah, I'm starting my day with some coffee. Once a week, I start with a yoga class with my husband. We do we do yoga together once a week, and then the rest of the time, it's like, all right, I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna, sit outside on my balcony and have some coffee.
Mhm. I actually don't like coffee. It does not appeal.
Some
No,
people don't. Are you a tea person?
not really. Tea is fine, but coffee just tastes icky to me. Yeah.
We can still be friends.
Yeah, yeah, good. Let's go back to this book that you mentioned, Mindset by Carol Dweck, I think.
Carol Dweck, yeah.
So, what is the biggest takeaway or epiphany, life changing kind of piece of content from that book that you got, and maybe our listener will relate to or resonate with?
And I feel like this idea of growth mindset has sort of made its way into the mainstream. Um, but the book itself is creates this contrast between fixed mindset, which is we have, the skills and abilities and whatever that we are born with, and that's it. And growth mindset, which is we are infinitely capable if we decide to, and she backs it up with research and studies and all those things, to grow, to change, to learn, to do things. And what makes the difference is how we perceive those abilities and how we take criticism. If we're coming at something from a fixed mindset, then any sort of criticism will feel like a personal attack almost. Well, okay, you couldn't do that because that's you, versus a growth mindset where you come across a failure or a setback and it's like, well, okay, I just haven't learned to do this thing yet. It says nothing about me or what I'm potentially capable of. It's a lesson to be taken, internalized, and learned from.
Did you used to take things personally?
Do I? I think in many ways, because that's how society, at least, with my generation, is used to treating kids and raising kids and looking at things in most cases, right? I think we're a little smarter now than we were, but it was like, okay, well, you get a grade and you get this, and like, you're in the smart class or you're not in the smart class, and that's just who you are, um, it's hard not to pick up some of that. I
Mhm.
think, a lot of people struggle with criticism, internalizing criticism.
Yeah. Yeah. You know the book, The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz? One of the four agreements is to not take anything personally. Yeah. It's life-changing if you really do take that on board and not take anything personally. We've covered a bunch of stuff, so I want to just kind of zoom out a bit and see if there's anything that you wanted to share as a last takeaway or wisdom nugget that may or may not even have anything to do with marketing and would be something we haven't already talked about. So not covering the launch strategies and all that. What would be that wisdom nugget?
Um, Weirdly enough, it's going to be parenting advice.
Great.
I feel like we've covered the gamut here, and I think I've got, thoughts brewing for a potential book or something, like the lessons that we take from marketing to our parenting and vice versa. And I think there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of commonalities, there's a lot of things that I see myself doing, as a parent, that are informed by what I do, and influence and persuasion, all of those things. Like, how do you, price anchor a kid on, something that they want potentially, and you're like, well, this, but actually you're getting a great deal because, and I do it without even noticing that I'm doing it, which is the fun part. So advice, um, everything, this is going to sound, everything is sales and marketing at the end of the day. And that's because sales and marketing is belief change. That's all it is. And that has applications for parenting, politics. We're on marketing speak, right? So this is probably not a new idea that I'm bringing, but it's a good reminder that the once you are a good marketer, an effective marketer, it opens up a set of, skills and talents and perspectives that can be useful to you in many, many other ways.
Cool. And for our listener who's not familiar with the term price anchor or price anchoring, can you define that?
Sure. Price anchoring, it's also in influence. If you walk into a car dealership or something, you see it all the time where the retail price is like $50, so that when it's on sale for 20, it looks like a good deal. So you've anchored that price at 50, but the real price that you want to get for it is $20. Uh, just based on the perspective that the first number that we see, the big number, sort of sets the frame for what comes after it. Whereas $20 for something out of context might feel expensive.
Yep. Good stuff. All right. Now, where does our listener or viewer find you and perhaps work with you?
Sure. Best place to find me is on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website at dwcopy.com.
And your program, Launch Flow, that's open how many times a year?
That program is open all year long.
Okay, so that one's evergreen. Awesome. All right. So we'll include links in the show notes for this, all the stuff we talked about. And yeah, thank you for sharing all sorts of wonderful wisdom and experience.
All right. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, listener. We'll catch you on the next episode. In the meantime, have a fantastic week. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.